5 years had passed since humanity closed its doors to the galaxy. Earth and the solar system had transformed in that time. The returned colonists had brought with them knowledge, experience, and determination. Without the Council draining their resources through unfair trade agreements, humanity's economy had flourished. Captain Alan Pierce was no longer just a ship captain. He now helped lead the Solar Defense Initiative, a project dedicated to making sure humanity would never be vulnerable again. He stood in a shipyard orbiting Earth, watching workers construct a new generation of vessels. These ships were different from anything humans had built before. "They are beautiful," Lisa Grant said, standing beside him. She had stayed with Alan after the Exodus, working on communication systems that the Council could never intercept or decode. The new ships were entirely human-designed. No Council technology, no hidden backdoors, no remote shutdown capabilities. They were slower than Council vessels, but they were completely independent. More importantly, they were armed with weapons that humans had developed in secret over the past 5 years. "We will be ready next time," Alan said quietly. But while humanity rebuilt, the Galactic Council was falling apart. The first species to feel the impact was the Zephyrian Empire. Their military had relied heavily on human tactical training. General Crix, who had replaced the human advisor Mira Holland, stood in his command center and watched his fleets being destroyed. The border conflict with the Crexian species should have been manageable. The Zephyr forces outnumbered the enemy 3-1. They had better ships and more experience, but they had forgotten everything humans had taught them about strategy. General Crix watched as his ships flew in predictable formations. They responded to enemy movements exactly as they had been trained 3 decades ago, before humans arrived. The Crexians, who had learned human tactics through spies, tore through the Zephyr fleets effortlessly. "Where are the human advisors?" Crix demanded. "Gone," his second officer replied. "They all left 5 years ago." "Then find their training manuals, their tactical databases. Those were all destroyed during the Exodus, sir. The humans took everything with them." Crix watched another squadron of his ships explode on the monitors. The Zephyrian Empire was losing its first major war in a century, and there was nothing he could do about it. Humans had taught them how to think differently, how to fight smarter. Without that knowledge, they were returning to old patterns that no longer worked. The Korvax Collective faced different problems. Ambassador Threll stood before the Council and delivered a report that nobody wanted to hear. "Our energy production has fallen by 40%, Threll said, his crystalline form refracting light in worried patterns. "The human-designed reactors are failing and we cannot repair them." The reactors had been revolutionary. Humans had shown the Korvax how to modify their existing technology to produce 3 times more energy with half the waste. Entire Korvax industrial worlds ran on human-designed systems, but the humans had never shared the complete blueprints. They had installed the systems and trained Korvax engineers on basic maintenance. However, the core principles, the deep understanding of how everything worked together, that knowledge had left with the humans. Now the reactors were breaking down. Components wore out. Systems drifted out of alignment. Korvax engineers tried to fix them, but they were working blind. Every repair was a guess. Most guesses were wrong. "Can we contact the humans?" one council member asked. "Negotiate for their help?" "We gave them an ultimatum," another replied bitterly. "We demanded they submit to us. Then we watched them leave in silence. Our pride prevents us from crawling back now." The medical crisis hit the Talrathi species hardest. They were an aquatic people whose homeworld was covered in vast oceans. A pandemic spread through their population, killing millions. Their doctors tried everything they knew, but nothing worked. Dr. Philip Kent, a human physician who had returned to Earth during the Exodus, watched news reports about the Talrathi pandemic. He recognized the symptoms immediately. He had dealt with this exact disease 4 years ago on a human colony. "I have the cure," he told his supervisor. "I developed it when this same disease appeared among our colonists. The formula is in my research files. Should we contact them?" his supervisor asked. "Offer to help?" Philip thought about it for a long time. He remembered the ultimatum. He remembered the evacuation. He remembered watching families leave behind everything they had built. Then he thought about millions of Talrathi dying from something he could cure. "Send a message," he said finally. "Tell them the cure exists. Tell them we are willing to share it." but also tell them it will cost them. Fair payment, equal exchange. No more free gifts, the message was sent. The council debated for 3 days while more Telrathi died. Finally, they agreed to pay what the humans asked. The cure was transmitted and the pandemic ended, but the cost had been high and not just in money. The council had admitted they needed humanity. That admission hurt worse than any military defeat. Supreme Chancellor Vorath called emergency council sessions monthly. Each one brought more bad news. The economy was shrinking. Military losses were mounting. Medical emergencies were increasing. Social problems were growing. How did one species make such a difference? Vorath demanded. We are 17 civilizations. We have existed for thousands of years. How can we fail without humans? Ambassador Threll answered quietly. Because they approached problems differently. They asked questions we never thought to ask. They imagined solutions we could not see. We thought we were better than them because we were older. But age is not the same as wisdom. Then we bring them back, another council member said. We negotiate their return. With what? Threll asked. What do we offer them? They have rebuilt their society without us. They are thriving while we struggle. Why would they return to serve masters who betrayed their trust? The council had no answer. On Earth, President Daniel Foster was in his final year as president. He sat in the Oval Office with Alan Pierce discussing reports from beyond the solar system. We are receiving signals, Alan said. Council vessels at the edge of our territory. They are not approaching, just broadcasting messages, asking for talks. What kind of talks? They are not specific. But the tone is different. Less commanding. More requesting. Foster leaned back in his chair. He looked at the stars through his window. Let them wait. We are not ready to talk yet. Maybe we will never be ready. Do you think we will ever return to the stars? Foster smiled. It was a hard smile, but honest. Yes, but not as we were before. Not as naive explorers eager to make friends. We will return when we are strong enough that nobody can threaten us, wise enough that nobody can exploit us, and proud enough to walk away if we do not like what we find. That could take decades. Then it takes decades. Some things are worth waiting for. Across human space, the younger generation was growing up with stories of the Exodus. Children learned about the Golden Age when humanity walked among aliens. They learned about the betrayal that ended it. They learned about the dignity of departure. Sophie Martinez, daughter of former Governor Eric Martinez, was 12 years old. She had been born during the Exodus in the cramped hold of a transport ship. She had never seen New Terra, the world her parents had built and abandoned. Why did we leave? She asked her father one evening. Eric looked at his daughter and chose his words carefully. Because staying would have cost us something more important than colonies or technology. It would have cost us our freedom. And without freedom, all those other things do not matter. Will we go back someday? Yes, Eric said with certainty. But when we do, it will be different. We will be stronger. We will be wiser. And we will never again give away so much that we become dependent on others. Sophie thought about that. What if they want to be friends again? Then they will have to prove they understand what friendship means. Real friendship is between equals, not between masters and servants. In the abandoned colonies, council species had moved into human cities, but they found the experience unsettling. The buildings were designed for human proportions. The art on the walls showed human perspectives. The very air seemed to whisper of the people who had once lived there. Some aliens felt like they were living in graveyards. Others felt like thieves who had stolen something precious. The colonies functioned, but they were never the same. They were copies without the spirit of the original. The galaxy had learned a lesson, but it was a hard lesson that came with a high price. 17 species had taken humanity for granted. They had exploited human generosity, controlled human freedom, and forced human departure. Now they lived with the consequences. Military defeats, economic decline, medical crises, social problems. All the small and large ways that humanity had improved galactic life were suddenly absent. The Galactic Council still governed. Supreme Chancellor Vorath still sat in his high chamber. 17 species still met to discuss politics and trade. But something fundamental had changed. The Golden Age was over and everyone knew it. At the edge of human space, a council ship waited patiently. Inside, Ambassador Threll composed another message to Earth. He had sent dozens over the past year. Most had been ignored. Some had received brief, cold responses. The largest evacuation in human history began at dawn. Captain Alan Pierce stood on the bridge of an old transport ship called the Liberty. It was not like the Horizon. This ship was older, slower, and less comfortable. But it had one important quality. It was built entirely with human technology. The Council could not turn it off with a remote command. Hundreds of ships like the Liberty were pulled out of storage facilities. They had been sitting unused for years, gathering dust while humans flew in newer Council-designed vessels. Now these old ships were humanity's only hope. Mechanics worked around the clock to get them running again. Some ships had not moved in a decade. Alan's mission was to evacuate the colony on New Terra. It was one of the largest human settlements outside the solar system. 3 million people lived there. They had farms, schools, hospitals, and homes. It had taken 20 years to build New Terra into a thriving world. Now it had to be emptied in less than a month. Governor Eric Martinez met Alan when the Liberty arrived in orbit. Eric had been the colony's leader for 8 years. He looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He had not slept properly in days, Captain Pierce, Eric said, shaking Alan's hand. Thank you for coming.
We need all the ships we can get. How is the evacuation going?
Eric gestured to the window. Below them, the colony was a hive of activity. Shuttles moved constantly between the surface and orbit. Long lines of people waited at spaceports. Cargo containers were stacked everywhere. Everyone is doing their best, Eric said. But it is hard. People are leaving homes they built with their own hands, leaving businesses they spent years creating. Parents are explaining to children why they have to abandon everything familiar. Alan watched a family board a shuttle. The parents carried what looked like photo albums. The children held stuffed toys. Everything else was being left behind. What happens to everything we leave? Eric asked. The Council will take it, Alan replied. They said as much. They will move their own people into our homes, use our equipment, harvest our crops. Eric's jaw tightened. We built this world from nothing. We cleared the land. We planted every tree. We constructed every building. And now they just take it. That is who they are, Alan said quietly. That is who they have always been. We were just too trusting to see it. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. On every human colony, people were packing their lives into boxes. Children said goodbye to playgrounds they would never see again. Farmers abandoned fields they had tended for years. Teachers erased lesson plans from classroom boards one final time. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark was in charge of the military evacuation. His job was different from the civilian evacuations. He had to make sure the Council gained nothing useful from humanity's military bases. On the Kepler 442b colony, where the defense grid had been sabotaged, Ryan oversaw the demolition teams. Every database was being wiped clean. Every weapons platform was being disabled beyond repair. The Council would get the buildings, but they would get nothing useful inside them. Why not just destroy everything? One of his soldiers asked. Because we made a deal, Ryan replied. We leave peacefully, they let us go safely. We keep our word even if they never kept theirs. But that did not mean Ryan was making it easy for them. Every strategic advantage humans had given the Council was being taken back or destroyed. Research files were encrypted and deleted. Tactical manuals were shredded. Training programs were erased. Engineers worked alongside soldiers. They modified systems to fail after a certain time. They introduced subtle flaws that would not appear for months. The Council would inherit human military bases, but those bases would be useless. On the research station orbiting Jupiter's moon Europa, scientists faced difficult choices. Dr. Simon Webb had spent 5 years developing new medical treatments. Some of his work had been shared with the Council, but his most recent research was still confidential. Should we destroy it? His assistant Claire Nelson asked. Simon looked at his life's work displayed on screens around them. We take it with us, all of it. Every note, every formula, every test result. If the Council wants our knowledge, they can ask politely, and we can say no. They downloaded everything to encrypted storage devices small enough to fit in their pockets. Decades of human research reduced to data that could be carried by hand. Then they wiped the station's computers completely. The Council would find empty databases when they arrived. Admiral Peter Kane coordinated the entire evacuation from Earth. His office was chaos. Screens showed the location of every human ship. Maps displayed every colony being evacuated. Communication channels never stopped bringing new problems. New Terra is running behind schedule, one officer reported. They need more ships. Colony on Ross 128b is finished early, another said. Their ships can divert to help. Station Alpha reports council ships watching them, a third officer called out. They are not interfering, but they are watching everything. Peter made decisions rapidly. Which ships went where? Which colonies needed priority? How to maximize efficiency with limited resources. It was like conducting an orchestra, but every wrong note meant people left behind. His biggest concern was time. 30 days was not enough. Some colonies were so far away that it took almost a week just to reach them. That left little time for actual evacuation. Peter had asked the council for an extension. They had refused. 30 days was generous. Vorath had replied coldly, "Use your time wisely." As the days passed, the scope of what humanity was abandoning became clear. They were not just leaving buildings and equipment. They were leaving history. The first human child born on another world. The first crops grown in alien soil. The first marriages between people from different colonies. The first generation who had never seen Earth. Governor Eric Martinez walked through New Terra one last time before leaving. The streets were empty now. Everyone had been evacuated. But the city remained. Buildings stood silent. Parks sat empty. The wind blew through streets that would never hear human voices again. His assistant, Claire Nelson, walked with him. She had been with him since the colony was founded. "It feels wrong to leave so much behind," she said softly. Eric nodded. "What feels wrong is staying under their terms. We built this. We can build it again, somewhere they cannot touch." On the final day, the last transports left the colonies. Alan Pierce piloted the Liberty away from New Terra. He looked back at the planet shrinking behind them. Lights still shone in the cities. From orbit, it looked like people still lived there, but it was just a ghost, a memory of what humans had built and been forced to abandon. The journey home took weeks. The old ships were slow. Families crowded into spaces meant for cargo. Food was rationed. Water was recycled. Children cried. Adults tried to stay strong. Everyone was exhausted, but they were free. That was what mattered. They were going home, and nobody could stop them or control them. Admiral Kane watched as the last ships entered the solar system. He had been counting every vessel, tracking every person. When the final transport passed Mars, he allowed himself a moment of relief. "Is everyone accounted for?" President Foster asked. He had barely left the command center in 30 days. "Everyone," Kane confirmed. Millions of people evacuated from 37 colonies. Not a single person left behind. Foster closed his eyes. Thank God. The returning colonists were distributed across Earth and the existing solar system settlements. The asteroid habitats absorbed as many as they could. Mars colonies made room. Earth opened its doors to millions. It was crowded. It was chaotic, but it was home. On the 30th day exactly, the last human ship crossed the boundary of Council space. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark personally piloted the final vessel out of the Kepler system. He looked back at the colonies humanity had built and was now abandoning. "Goodbye," he said quietly. "We will remember what we built here, and someday we will build it again." Behind them, Council ships were already moving into position. Within hours, alien species would be occupying human homes, using human equipment, living in human cities. But they would never be what humans had made them. They would just be pale copies of something real. President Foster gave one final speech as the exodus ended. He stood before the United Nations, looking older but somehow stronger than before. "We have completed the largest evacuation in human history. Millions of people have returned home. We left behind decades of work, countless resources and worlds we built with our own hands. But we brought back something more valuable. We brought back our freedom." The assembly applauded, but it was a tired sound. People were relieved but also sad. They had lost so much. "The galaxy will continue without us," Foster continued. "The Council will occupy our colonies. They will use what we built. But they will never have what made those places special. They will never have the human spirit that created them." Alan Pierce watched the speech from his apartment. His crew sat with him. They had been through everything together. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked. Alan thought about it. "We rebuild, we learn. We make sure we never make the same mistakes again. And someday, when we are ready, we will return to the stars. On our terms." The evacuation was complete. Humanity had departed without conflict. They had asked for nothing except to be left alone. They had taken only what was truly theirs and left the rest behind. The message arrived on every human screen at the same moment. Television broadcasts were interrupted. Computer terminals displayed it automatically. Communication devices showed nothing else. Even the displays in Times Square went dark and showed a single image. Supreme Chancellor Vorath appeared before all of humanity. The reptilian being was ancient and massive. His species had founded the Galactic Council 3,000 years before humans even invented writing. His eyes were cold and calculating as he began to speak. "People of Earth," Vorath said in a voice that had been translated into every human language, "the Galactic Council has reached a decision about your place in our alliance." President Daniel Foster watched from the Oval Office. His advisors surrounded him. Admiral Peter Kane stood rigid near the window. Linda Torres, who managed all the human colonies, held a tablet that she had forgotten she was holding. "You have been valuable contributors," Vorath continued. "Your innovations have been appreciated. However, the Council has determined that humanity's independent nature poses a risk to galactic stability." Alan Pierce watched from his apartment. Lisa, Paul, and Karen had come over when they heard the broadcast was coming. They sat together in silence, knowing this moment would change everything. "Therefore," Vorath said, "the Council offers humanity a choice." The screen behind him displayed two options in clear text. "You may accept full integration into the Council hierarchy. You will surrender control of your military forces. You will give us authority over your technology. You will allow us to oversee your colonies. In return, you will keep your lives and your worlds. You will have a voice in Council affairs, though your authority will be limited." Foster felt his hands clench into fists. This was not a partnership. This was surrender. Or, Vorath continued, "you may refuse. You may choose to oppose the Council's collective will. But you should understand what that means. The Council represents 17 species, millions of warships, thousands of years of military experience. Consider your choice carefully." The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. You have 72 hours to decide. "The Council awaits your response." The screen went dark. For a moment, the entire planet was silent. Then the chaos began. The emergency United Nations session started within the hour. Representatives from every nation gathered. Some appeared in person. Others joined through holographic projection. Everyone was shouting, "We cannot fight them," one representative said. "We will lose everything." "We cannot surrender our freedom," another argued. "What is life without dignity?" "Dignity does not matter if we are all dead," a third replied. The arguments went in circles. Fear battled against pride. Survival instinct fought with the desire for independence. Nobody had a good answer because there were no good answers. Admiral Peter Kane was called to speak. He stood before the assembly and delivered the truth that nobody wanted to hear. "We cannot win a military conflict," he said flatly. "Our analysis is clear. The Council controls the technology in our ships. They can disable our defense systems with a single command. We have thousands of vessels. They have millions. This is not a war we can fight. This is an execution waiting to happen." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was saying. Humanity had been so eager to join the galactic community that they had made themselves defenseless. They had given away every advantage without realizing what they were doing. President Foster called an emergency meeting with his closest advisors. Alan Pierce was summoned, along with Helen Barnes, Ryan Clark, and dozens of others who had seen the Council's true nature. They gathered in a secured room deep beneath the White House. "There must be another option," Foster said. He looked around the table at faces filled with worry and anger. "We cannot fight, but I will not surrender our freedom. There has to be something else." People offered suggestions. Maybe they could negotiate better terms. Maybe they could ask for more time. Maybe they could find allies among the other Council species. But every idea fell apart under scrutiny. The Council held all the power. There was no negotiation possible. Then Alan Pierce spoke quietly. "There is one option we have not considered, Mr. President." Everyone turned to look at him. "We leave." The room erupted in questions. Alan raised his hand for silence. "We cannot fight them. We cannot submit to them. But we can walk away. We abandon the colonies. We leave behind all the technology they gave us. We return to Earth and the solar system. We cut ourselves off completely." "That would set us back decades," Linda Torres said. "We have 37 colonies. Millions of people living on other worlds. We would lose everything we have built. But we would keep our freedom," Helen Barnes said softly. and we would keep our dignity. Admiral Kane leaned forward. It could work. If we abandon their technology, they have no control over us. We go back to using our own ships, our own systems, slower and more primitive, but truly ours. We would be giving up on the stars, someone said, returning to being stuck in our own solar system. For now, Alan replied. But we would be free, and free people can always reach for the stars again when they are ready, on their own terms. The debate continued for hours. Some called it cowardice. Others called it the only realistic option. Some said it was abandoning the dream of a galactic civilization. Others said it was saving humanity from slavery. Foster listened to everything. He thought about the choice before him. Submit and lose what made humanity human. Fight and watch his species be destroyed. Or leave and accept temporary defeat to preserve future hope. Finally, he made his decision. We leave, he said firmly. We tried to be part of their galaxy. They repaid our trust with exploitation.
We will not fight them.
We will not become their servants. We will go home. The decision was made, but it had to be approved by the United Nations. Another emergency session was called. President Foster addressed the assembly personally. The council offered us two choices, he said. Submit or fight. But there is always a third choice. We can walk away. We can return to Earth and rebuild what we had before. Yes, we will lose the colonies. Yes, we will lose decades of progress. But we will keep something more important. We will keep our freedom. The vote was not unanimous. Many representatives argued against it. Some colonies did not want to be abandoned. Some military leaders wanted to fight despite the odds. But in the end, the majority voted to leave. Foster prepared his final message to humanity. He recorded it carefully, knowing these words would echo through history. We came to the stars seeking friendship and progress. We offered our knowledge freely. We worked alongside alien species with hope and trust. But we found something different than what we expected. We found exploitation dressed as partnership. We found control disguised as cooperation. His voice grew stronger. The Galactic Council has given us an ultimatum. They want us to surrender our independence. They want us to become subordinates in a galaxy they control. We refuse, not with violence, not with threats, but with a simple act. We are leaving. We will abandon our colonies. We will return to Earth. We will take nothing that belongs to them. We will ask nothing from them. We will simply go home and close the door behind us. Perhaps someday we will return to the stars. But if we do, it will be as free people, as equals, or not at all. The message was transmitted to the Council. President Foster kept it brief. Humanity declines both options. We are departing from all Council territories. We want nothing from you. We will take nothing of yours. Leave us in peace and we will trouble you no more. Vorath's response came within minutes. His face appeared on screens again, but this time there was something different in his expression. Contempt mixed with surprise. So humanity chooses to run away, he said. You prove yourselves weak and foolish. Very well. Gather your people and go. You have 30 days to remove all humans from Council space. After that, we will reclaim what you abandon. Leave quickly and you may leave safely. The transmission ended. Humanity had made its choice. The greatest exodus in human history was about to begin. Alan Pierce stood with his crew and watched the stars through his apartment window. Somewhere out there were the colonies they would have to evacuate. Somewhere out there was everything humanity had built over 40 years. Do you think we are doing the right thing? Lisa asked. Alan thought about it for a long moment. I think we are doing the only thing that lets us remain human. Everything else was just different forms of surrender. The evacuation orders went out immediately. Every colony, every station, every human beyond the solar system had 30 days to pack up and leave. It seemed impossible, but humanity had no choice except to try. The first sign of trouble came from a small colony on a planet called Kepler 442b. The humans there had been living peacefully for 5 years. They grew food, raised families, and built homes under a sky with 2 suns. Everything had been normal until the meteor shower arrived. The colony had a defense grid. The Council had installed it 3 years ago. It was supposed to protect the settlement from any danger from space. The system would detect incoming objects and destroy them before they could hit the ground. It had worked perfectly during tests, but when the meteors came, the defense grid did nothing. It stayed silent while rocks the size of cars crashed into buildings. 12 people died. Hundreds were injured. Half the colony was destroyed in minutes. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark was in charge of colony security. He had been a soldier before becoming a colonist. When the disaster ended, he immediately checked the defense system. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The logs told a strange story. The system had detected the meteors. It had calculated their trajectories. It had prepared to fire. Then, 5 seconds before activation, it had received a command to shut down. The command had come from somewhere else, somewhere far away. Ryan reported this to the council authorities. He sent detailed logs and evidence. He waited for a response. When it came, the message was brief and cold. You must be mistaken. The system malfunctioned. These things happen. We will investigate. But no one came to investigate. Instead, 2 days later, council security officers arrived. They took all the computer logs. They took Ryan's personal recordings. They told him the matter was classified and that he should not discuss it with anyone. But people died, Ryan said. Accidents happen in space, the officer replied. Be grateful we are here to protect you. After they left, Ryan sat in his office and stared at the wall. Something was terribly wrong. The defense grid had not malfunctioned. Someone had turned it off on purpose. But why and who? On the diplomatic front, Ambassador Helen Barnes was having her own problems. Helen had been negotiating trade agreements for 3 years. She was good at her job. She understood how to make deals that helped everyone. But recently things had changed. The council representatives were different now. They smiled less. They demanded more. Trade agreements that used to take weeks now took months. The terms kept getting worse for human colonies. Helen tried to negotiate fairly. These prices are too high, she would say. Our colonies cannot afford this. Then perhaps your colonies should produce more, the alien negotiators would reply. Or perhaps humanity should remember that you are still new to the council. You should be grateful for what we offer. Grateful. That word kept appearing in conversations, as if humans should be thankful for the privilege of being exploited. Helen sent reports to Earth. She explained what was happening. But her messages were delayed. Sometimes they arrived weeks late. Sometimes parts were missing. She began to suspect that someone was reading everything she sent. One night she contacted Alan Pierce through a secure channel. The Horizon was passing through a nearby system. Helen needed to talk to someone she trusted. Alan, something is wrong, she said. Her face on the screen looked tired and worried. They are treating us differently. Like we are less than them. Like we do not matter. Alan had noticed similar things. I have been feeling it too. Small changes. But I thought I was imagining things. You are not imagining anything, Helen said firmly. This is real. And I think it is going to get worse. She was right. It got much worse very quickly. Paul Davis made his discovery 3 days later. He had been bothered by that strange code he found in the quantum drive. During a quiet night shift, he decided to investigate properly. What he found made his blood run cold. The code was a backdoor. A hidden command built into every piece of council technology that humans used. Every ship, every station, every defense system, every quantum drive. All of it could be shut down remotely. One signal, one command code, and everything would stop working. Paul stared at his screen and understood what it meant. The council could turn off every human ship in space. They could disable every colony defense grid. They could leave humanity completely helpless with a single command. We are not partners, Paul whispered to himself. We are prisoners who do not know we are in a cage. He immediately went to find Alan. The captain was in his quarters, reviewing reports. Paul burst in without knocking. Captain, we have a serious problem. Paul explained everything. He showed Alan the code. He explained what it could do. Alan felt his stomach drop as he understood the implications. How long has this been in our systems? Since the beginning, Paul said. Since the first day we installed council technology. They have always had this control over us. Alan made a decision. We need to warn Earth immediately. He went to the bridge and composed an urgent message to Earth Command. He marked it high as priority. He explained everything Paul had found. Then he sent it. The message never arrived. Instead, within 2 hours, 5 council warships appeared around the horizon. They were huge vessels, each one carrying enough weapons to destroy Alan's ship 100 times over. A voice came over the communication system. It was cold and mechanical. Captain Pierce, you are ordered to delete all data regarding the recent discovery. You will return to Earth immediately. This matter is classified under Council Security Protocol. Failure to comply will result in serious consequences. Alan looked at his crew. Lisa's face was pale. Karen gripped the edge of her console so hard her knuckles turned white. Paul stood behind him, breathing heavily. They had no choice. The warships could destroy them in seconds. Alan gave the order to delete the files. Paul complied, his fingers shaking as he typed the commands. But Alan was not stupid. Before deleting everything, he made a copy. He encrypted it with a code only he knew. He hid it in his personal logs where the Council might not think to look. If they died, at least someone might find the truth someday. The journey back to Earth was silent and tense. The Council warships escorted them the entire way. No one spoke unless necessary. Everyone understood that something fundamental had changed. When they arrived at Earth, they were taken immediately to a secured government building. Council security officers were waiting. So was President Daniel Foster. The president looked older than Alan remembered. His face was lined with stress and worry. The debriefing took hours. Council officers asked questions. They took statements. They warned about discussing classified information. President Foster sat through it all, saying nothing. Finally, it ended. The council officers left. Alan found himself alone with the president for a brief moment. "Sir, what is happening to us?" Daniel Foster looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "We made a terrible mistake, Captain. We trusted too easily. We gave too much. We thought we were building friendships. But we were really just giving them everything they needed to control us. What do we do now?" "I do not know yet," Foster said quietly. "But we cannot continue like this. We are trapped in a cage we built with our own hands. And I am not sure how we get out." Alan returned to his crew. They gathered in a small room, away from any recording devices they knew about. They spoke in whispers. "They own us," Lisa said. "Every ship, every station, everything we have in space. They can turn it all off whenever they want. We gave them that power," Karen added. "We installed their technology everywhere because we trusted them." "What do we do?" Paul asked. Alan had no answer. None of them did. They had discovered the truth too late. Humanity had walked into a trap willingly, smiling and believing in friendship. Now they were trapped, and the galaxy was showing its true face. Outside the window, Earth spun peacefully. Billions of humans living their lives not knowing that their freedom was an illusion. Not knowing that everything they had built among the stars could vanish with a single command. The golden age was over. The cage door had become visible. And humanity was about to learn what happened to species who trusted too much in a galaxy that valued power over friendship. The stars had never looked so welcoming. Captain Alan Pierce stood on the bridge of his ship, the Horizon, and watched as another alien vessel passed by in friendship. It was the year 2157, and humans had finally made their place among the galaxies. 40 years had passed since the first aliens had arrived on Earth, and everything had changed since that day. Alan remembered the stories his grandfather told him. Stories about when humans thought they were alone in the universe. Stories about fear and wonder when the first ships appeared in Earth's sky. But those days were long gone now. Humans lived on dozens of worlds across space. They worked alongside 17 different alien species. They had become part of something called the Galactic Council. The Council had welcomed humanity with open arms. At least that was what everyone believed. The aliens needed what humans could offer. Human engineers could fix problems that had stumped alien scientists for years. Human doctors found cures for diseases that had killed millions. Human artists created beauty that amazed species who had never seen anything like it before. Alan's crew was small but dedicated. Lisa Grant handled all communications. She could speak 4 alien languages and was learning a 5th. Paul Davis kept the ship running. He understood engines better than anyone Alan had ever met. Karen White was their doctor. She had saved both human and alien lives during their 3 years of travel. They moved between worlds carrying diplomats and making peace. Alan loved his job. Every successful negotiation felt like a victory for all of humanity. Every new friendship between species made the galaxy feel safer. On this particular morning, Alan was meeting with Ambassador Threll. The alien was tall and made of crystal that reflected light in strange ways. Threll came from a species called the Korvax Collective. They were older than humanity by thousands of years and controlled dozens of important worlds. "Captain Pierce," Threll said in his echoing voice, "your people continue to amaze us." Alan smiled. We try our best, Ambassador. That is precisely what concerns me, Thrall said, the crystal being tilted his head. You give too much. Your knowledge, your technology, your time. You share everything without asking for proper payment. Alan had heard this before. Progress helps everyone, Ambassador. If we can make life better for others, why wouldn't we? Thrall made a sound that might have been a sigh. Your species is young. You will learn. The conversation ended, and Alan thought nothing more of it. He was too busy preparing for their next mission. They were heading to the Zephyrian homeworld. The Zephyrians were insect-like creatures who controlled most of the Council's military forces. They had asked for human help with military training. General Mira Holland had been living on the Zephyrian world for 2 years now. She taught their officers about human strategy and tactics. Alan had spoken with her just last week. She seemed happy with her work. She believed she was building peace by making the Council's military stronger and smarter. Back on Earth, President Daniel Foster was giving another speech. Alan watched the recording in his cabin that night. The president stood before the United Nations building, his face filled with pride. We have shown the galaxy what humanity can do, Foster said. We have proven that different species can work together. We are building a future where everyone benefits. Together we are stronger than we could ever be alone. The crowd cheered. People waved flags from different human colonies across space. It was a good day to be human. They had gone from one small planet to being important members of a galactic civilization. Children grew up dreaming of visiting alien worlds. Parents felt safe knowing the Council protected them, but not everyone celebrated. In the dark meeting rooms of the Council chambers, other conversations were happening. Conversations that humans were not invited to hear. Alien leaders spoke about humanity in different ways when no humans were listening. They are useful, one said. They give us everything we ask for, another replied. They trust too easily, a third added. What happens when we have taken everything they have to offer? These questions floated through the Council leadership like poison. Humanity had shared so much. New types of engines that made ships faster, medical treatments that extended alien lives, weapons that made the Council's military unbeatable, art and music that enriched alien cultures, farming techniques that fed billions. The humans had given freely, asking only for friendship in return. They had believed they were building something beautiful. A galaxy where everyone worked together, a future where species differences did not matter. Lisa Grant noticed something odd during a routine communication check. Some messages from human colonies were being delayed. Nothing major, just a few hours here and there. She mentioned it to Alan. Probably just system traffic, Alan said. We're sending more messages than ever before. Lisa nodded, but something bothered her. The delays seemed deliberate, like someone was reading the messages before letting them through. But she had no proof, and everyone else thought she was being paranoid. Paul Davis was doing maintenance on the ship's main engine. The quantum drive had been a gift from the Council when humans first joined. It was better than anything humans had built themselves. It let them cross vast distances in days instead of years. Every human ship had one now. Every colony station. Every military vessel. As Paul worked, he noticed something strange in the code. A section that did not seem to belong. It was hidden deep in the system, where most people would never look. He made a note to investigate it later. Right now he had other repairs to finish. Karen White was in the medical bay reviewing patient files. She had treated 17 different species during her time on the horizon. Each one had different biology, different needs. But she had learned. Humans were good at learning. She thought about her old mentor, Dr. Raymond Cole. He had retired last year and returned to Earth. He had seemed sad during their last conversation. Take care, Karen, he had said, and pay attention. Not everything is as it seems. She had not understood what he meant at the time. Now she wondered if he had seen something she was missing. Alan Pierce sat in his captain's chair and looked at the stars. They were traveling to their next assignment. Another diplomatic mission. Another chance to build bridges between species. He felt good about the work they were doing. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a small worry was growing. Little things that did not quite make sense. Conversations that ended when humans entered the room. Meetings that humans were no longer invited to attend. Small delays and small changes that added up to something bigger. He shook his head. He was being foolish. The Council had welcomed humanity. They were partners. friends, allies. Everything was fine. Everything had to be fine. The Horizon continued its journey through space, carrying humans who still believed in the dream. A dream of cooperation and friendship, a dream of a galaxy united. But dreams, Alan would soon learn, could turn into nightmares. And the galaxy was about to teach humanity a lesson it would never forget.